Thank you for listening to the Leader's Choice Insurance Podcast with Rich Norley and Ben Clark. In this podcast, our goal is to showcase to you why Leader's Choice Insurance is different from your typical insurance agency and how you will be part of the next chapter. Welcome back to the Leader's Choice Podcast. We're here today with Eric Johnson. Eric is one of our senior brokers and mentor brokers here at Leader's Choice Insurance. Eric's been with us for 10 years. Coming up in September, and it's great to have Eric with us. He's going to talk a little bit about his journey today and the past 10 years with Leader's Choice Insurance.
Sure am.
Ben Clark's here as well.
I'm one of the other owners here. Eric, you want to just start off and kind of give a brief history of how you got started with Leader's Choice and what capacity and what roles you've progressed through?
Sure. I was originally brought in to do marketing, which was essentially submitting workers' comp applications to our various carrier partners to not only get quotes, but get competitive quotes for our clients and our potential prospects. I did that for about 6 months, and when I was interacting with other professionals at the carrier side, Rich overheard me talking on the phone and said, you know what, you have a pretty good attitude on the phone and you sound like you can talk to people. How would you feel about being a producer or a broker at our company? And I kicked it around for a little while, and I sort of talked to a few other producers that were here at the time. And I could tell that there was a big opportunity there as far as my own personal financial goals, which would have led into some more personal goals that I had for living out my life. And it seemed to me at the time that because of who I was, what I wanted to do, my personality type, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a salesman or if I wanted to be an advisor. I come from an advisor background. I figured I could take a stab at meshing the two together, being an advisor, organically leading people down a sales hole so that we end up at the other end of the line going, okay, this makes sense for you. This makes sense for me. It's a win-win. So I took the leap of faith, and long story short, 10 years went by, and here I am, still doing the same thing, loving it, you know.
Well, the risk reward is, there's a nice safe salary on one side of the fence, or you can go to the other side of the fence and have a potentially uncapped income potential, right? So the harder you work, the more you can make. It's not just the 5% raise every year. You can give yourself a $20,000, $30,000 or $40,000 raise each year if you have a decent year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing I constantly remind myself and the new producers that I meet with and try to encourage is that when you first start, and I think the first year I worked here, I was on the books for 6 months as a producer, and I made significantly less than I was expecting. However, every year I've grown anywhere between 50 to 100% personal revenue to myself. And that has led to just a ton of opportunities throughout my life. You know, money is not everything, but it certainly gives you the ability to do the things or achieve the things that you want to do outside of your occupation. And I look at myself to my peers, to speak on what you're talking about, Ben. I look at myself to my peers. A lot of my friends that I went to college with who have master's degrees or bachelor's degrees or even associate's degrees are unhappy in what they're doing. They're not challenged. They're not making enough money for the work they're putting in, or they're just punching in and out and they're not seeing the reward at the end of the tunnel like I was. You know, that 50% personal income growth every year is huge. It's massive. And it's hard to see when you first start out. You hear people talk about it, and you hear, me mention it, or Ben mention it, or Rich mention it. It's hard to see, but when you start seeing those paychecks come in, and then the first month that you get a really good paycheck, and you've done a good job for all your clients, it's the best feeling. It's the highest high you can get, I think, in my own personal professional growth, as my occupation is concerned. It's been pretty rewarding.
How does that build on itself year over year? I mean, can you think back to when you first started and to where you are now, and how does year 2 become easier than year 1, year 3 become easier than year 2, and so on?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, the first year you're sort of, I relate new producers in our field that we train and we grow, home grow, is almost like a you're learning your surroundings again, almost like a young adult or a child almost, where you're going to try things. They're going to be scary, unusual, different, maybe a little uncomfortable at first. But as you succeed through those small areas, maybe it's meeting a new prospect face to face that you feel like you may not be qualified to have a conversation with, or it's flying down to see a prospect or even a client that you've never met before, and it's scary. On the other side of that, when you get through that, you feel like you've accomplished something that I can take in. So your first year, you're sort of doing that. You're feeling out if the stove is hot. Oh, it's hot. Okay, don't touch it. I'll never do that again. But then what you'll do is you'll go, second year, okay, I was there. I did that. It ended up like this. Let me tweak this just a little bit, and maybe I'll get a different outcome. Or if it worked out perfectly, you can just do the same thing again, and it works out great. But each year is a snowball effect, both financially for yourself, for the agency, for your own personal development as a professional. Every single year is going to, month, day even, is going to build on your experience, your value, everything. So your money's going to go up, the value to your clients is going to go up, and it's going to become easier with time. I think it does become easier.
That's great. Excellent.
What do you think separates good producers like yourself versus, you've seen some producers that have come and gone. We don't have a high turnover rate, but what separates a good solid producer that sticks around versus a producer that's, here for 6 months and kind of washes out?
Desire, want. And I think that goes deeper than just our field. I think if you're somebody who has that desire, that want, that no safety net mentality with whatever you're going to do, you're going to jump in and you're going to do it well, you will succeed not only at Leader's Choice, but I believe in life. At Leader's Choice, being a successful broker, you have to want to show up, put the time and energy in, feel the challenge, personal growth reward. You have to want that. And there's nobody out there, and I can speak not just about Leader's Choice, but sort of about life. You have to want it just as much as the people around you wanting to help you. If I'm going to be your mentor, if I'm going to help guide you through your first couple of years here at Leader's Choice, I can't want it more than you. You have to want it just as much. And that's what I think.
And you're a mentor to producers. And is that some of the kind of stuff that you try to instill into them?
100%. One of my most successful mentees is what I like to call him, who actually just graduated last week from his mentorship with me. He has all the pieces. You have all the pieces. You're a professional. You can talk to folks. You have the personality. People are, they have this. You have this natural gravity for them to come to you. However, you have to show up. You have to want to be here. You have to want to better your situation, your client situation, Leader's Choice's situation. And that is something that, takes constant reminding. You need to stay with them and guide them through that. And I think after a while, you do it yourself. You no longer need somebody to go, let me champion this guy for you. Let me push you through to the next barrier. You become your own champion. And then if everything works out, they start championing the next producer, and so hopefully he'll be the next mentor and he can mentor somebody and have that same experience and help them grow up. But you got to want it.
For sure. Absolutely have to want it. And what's interesting in our business is that when you want something and you make a sale, you make commission, right? You give yourself a raise. It is interesting that there's still people that don't want to give themselves a raise.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's like Ben and Rich are great. They'll give you the keys to the car. You'll have a really sleek, fancy car to drive. Imagine your favorite car or whatever you want. And you know how to drive. You have everything to do it or accomplish your goal of driving this fancy car around. But you have to remind yourself that it takes gas and that I need to fuel it up and I need to wax it up. I got to wash it up. And so they'll give you all the tools and all the motivation and I'll help champion you. But you got to want that raise, and the first time you see a paycheck that's got 5 digits on it, well into the 5 digits, or you see an annual paycheck that's well into the 6 digits, you're going, man, I'll wax this car every day. I'll fill it up anytime it needs fuel, and the thing that, aside from money, that I really like, that I like to remind people about with the job is the reward of seeing a client benefit from your hard work. And you make money, the agency makes money, and the client gets a value. That is awesome. That's the fuel, because everybody's winning. And a lot of times if you explain it to people like that, they're happy to do business with you because that's how they feel when they do good jobs.
Now tell us, speaking of clients, tell us about, maybe pick one of your key clients and tell us about, how you met them, how long you've worked for them, maybe some about their coverages. Give us like a mental picture of one of your key clients.
Sure. So one of our agency's most appreciated clients, I met on a 24-hour notice from you guys. He said, hey, Eric, you want to fly down and meet this guy? I said, tomorrow? I said, yeah, tomorrow. I was like, all right, great. I'll go tomorrow. And that's an example of putting yourself in an uncomfortable position. So I flew down with another colleague of ours, met this individual, and we're sitting at the table across from each other, sort of sizing each other up, if you will, just, kind conversation, organic conversation. And we start talking about coverages, and I never forget, I'm sitting across the table from him, and we get to a section of his coverage called coinsurance, which, without getting too far in the weed, essentially is a penalty that everybody can be assessed if you don't insure to value your property or whatever we're talking about insuring. And I said, are you aware of what coinsurance is? And he sort of says, no, I don't know what that is. I've never even heard of that before. And I said, well, all your policies have an 80% coinsurance clause on them. If I could get all that waived for you and you didn't have any penalties, would you be willing to move forward with us and not basically have this secret hidden deductible on the policy? Long story short, we ended up moving forward, and it's a conversation that we have whenever we have dinner. We remind each other that these are the kind of things that a good advisor will point out and go, hey, have you heard of this before? Are you aware of this? And he had insurance for 20 years with the same person. And they never even talked about it. And what it's done is it's laid a foundation. So every time we talk now, we're talking about coverage. We're not talking about price. We're talking about value. And when you get to a large profile, high importance client like that or prospect, they don't care about the money as much as they care about protecting what they've built. And no one's ever going to cut their nose off to spite their face and save a couple grand when they know they're getting the right coverage from the right person. And so I've had that client now, or the agency's had that client now for almost 7 years. And we go to dinner 4 times, 5 times a year. And it's a blast. So it's now more than just a business relationship. It's a friend relationship.
And it's an advisory relationship.
Absolutely.
I think what's the saying? A business owner needs 3 legs on their stool. They need their banker, their lawyer, and their insurance person. And you don't want to have an insurance person who's just trying to make a sale, who's just trying to collect the next commission check, who needs to be the true advisor like you are, that is selling on a knowledge base rather than just a price base. I can go get you the cheapest policy that's basically a piece of paper that doesn't cover you for anything.
100%. And it's like, no one wants to pay any amount of money for something that's not going to work.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, I'd rather pay a little bit more and have it respond when I need it to.
Tell us about the scope of this client. How many policies are involved? How much premium do they pay? And candidly, how much do you make off this one individual client?
About premium wise, I think they're sitting at about $1 million, give or take a few $100,000. To me, I'm making between $20,000 and $40,000 a year, give or take, on mine gross from that account. It's got cumulatively 2 businesses with the portfolios each probably have between 8 and 12 lines of insurance on each one picking up a gap that's left from the previous one or the next policy that's in succession with it. So you start with sort of peeling the onion back, and everyone's got workers' comp, everybody's got general liability, everyone's got auto. But you start thinking outside of the box for these high-profile clients because they don't see the pitfalls of the gaps in between their insurance until they're sitting in a courtroom or a mediation going, don't have coverage for this? And you're like, no, sorry, you don't have coverage for that. So yeah, it's a high-profile account with a ton of lines, and it wasn't put in place overnight. It's taken a year or two to isolate the gaps, address them, fill the holes, and now he's got a very robust portfolio that I don't think is second to anybody.
What do you think he says when other brokers call him?
I'm good. I don't need to talk to you. I got a good broker.
Yeah, he's going to be a client for a long, long time.
Absolutely. And he's the kind of client that, you establish a value in a relationship with. And really what we strive to do this with all of our clients is you build enough value and you build enough relationship so that even when times get tough or, stuff hits the fan, they're willing to work with you to outside of the box to create a solution for them, even when you guys are in the thick of it. A client that you don't have that relationship with, who is just a number, you guys don't talk to each other very often, and chances are, I'd say 75% of broker relationships out there are like this. When stuff hits the fan, it's, well, you're fired. You did a bad job for me. And instead, on the other side of it, if you do have this relationship where you have this, this value built in, it's like, hey, Eric, I know I never really talked to you about this type of coverage, and now I'm in a situation where I'm uncovered here. It's my bad. I didn't mean to talk to you about it. I know you talked to me about it a bunch. What can I do to prevent this in the future? And all of a sudden, you're in it together. You're not me versus you. You're together trying to get a solution so that in the future, there's no exposure there and you're covered.
How did you learn all this stuff?
I learned a lot of it from trial by fire. Essentially, you get again when we start out here at Leader's Choice, you're going to have a raw canvas, if you will. We like to, I use the term again, home grow. I feel like I was homegrown, and I have this raw canvas that I built up layer by layer of paint, essentially. And at some point in there, you can get as far as you can organically just on your own desire and the tutelage of the people around you, but then you also need to enhance that with outside courses. So I've taken a few outside courses. I'm a certified insurance counselor, which has taken me almost 4 years to achieve. And then after that, you can go into other stuff like a certified authority on workers' compensation, a certified risk manager, and those things just supplement these layers of paint that we're putting on this canvas so that when you take those classes, you're now putting the highlights on the leaves. You're putting the reflective rays on the water that you paint on this canvas. So you're just becoming from an amateur who has some skill to put stuff together to a master who's then putting the final touches on this beautiful painting, and you have the full picture. It comes in phases. It's not overnight. It's almost painful sometimes, but like I said, when you asked me before, you look back over it and it is almost painless because it's seamless and organic.
Great. Good job, man.
Thanks.
Killing it, dude.
And I think that's one of the main reasons that we implemented the mentorship program is so that for a minimum of 6 months, when a new person comes in, they've got somebody like yourself sitting 10 feet away that they can walk into your office and say, what is an AI, an additional insured? What is a certificate of insurance? Why do I need to ask about payroll? So I think that really has helped to accelerate new people rather than, as yourself, had to kind of just learn it on your own because we didn't have the mentorship program then.
I think you guys developing the mentorship program is the top 5 biggest growths as an agency we've had, just as someone who's in the trenches on a daily basis. It's having somebody like myself or John, who's another senior broker here and a mentor, available to you to answer even the smallest question that you may feel is silly. But at the end of the day, if I can help give you that answer in 30 seconds or 15 seconds, where it took me maybe a week to figure something out, or maybe a little bit of, hey, that didn't work, now I got to try something else. It's invaluable. I watch my most recent success graduate from the mentor program, and I'm so proud to look out on the sales floor and hear him implementing the stuff that we talked about. It's like, hey, instead of calling somebody and trying to sell them a policy, ask them how they're doing. Ask them what their relationship is like with their current agency or their current insurance provider. Ask questions. Get to learn what that person is wanting, because anyone can call somebody and just spew over the phone or in person how to sell somebody on something. But until you understand what they're challenged with or what they're facing, you don't really know how to present solutions to them. So, listening out on the sales floor and hearing that person go, okay, well, that's interesting. Tell me about how that ended up for you. And if you could do it differently, how would you have handled it? And if I could get coverage for that, would that be interested, or would you be interested in that? And it's just a much more organic conversation. And then at the end of the day, the idea is you ask the questions, you find solutions and answers, you present them to the person, and if they like them and they see the value, the sale just sort of happens on its own. It's, you can try to sprinkle all that magic fairy sales dust on there, but if you do it like we're going to train you to do it, the sale should just fall right to where it should be, because it'll work for them and it'll work for you.
Excellent. So what, it seems like you've made it, so to speak. You've been in it 10 years. You got a great book of business. You got a great set of clientele. You're making a great income for yourself. What are some of your future goals, or what are you excited about for the future?
Well, I'm always hungry. I'm always excited. I follow this mantra of never having a safety net and wanting to put goals and challenges in front of myself that are both short-term, mid-term, and long-term. So to answer your question, I want to continue to grow my book of business. I want to continue to help my clients that I've already brought into our fold here at Leader's Choice, but I also want to branch into the unknown and try things that I've never done. And for me, that's working on large construction developments, sky rises, national developments, whether that be in other states, New York, Seattle, Texas. There's places all over the world where insurance is needed, not just in our communities. And for me, after developing this solid core, I'm now ready to take the dive into these sort of unknown channels, not just for myself, but just for a lot of agents, because let's face it, it's scary. Like, let me write a 65-story new development in Dubai. Okay, how do I go about doing that? Who do I even talk to about doing that? So it's now for me, it's again, I've got the canvas, I've painted the beautiful painting, I've taken all the stuff, but I want to learn how to take the next step. So I'm never going to be complacent in just what I have. Just always.
That's really cool. That's really cool. The Dubai thing would be wild.
I know. Well, it's crazy. It's like, I was on a phone call the other day, and I'm getting sort of off topic. I was on the phone the other day with another guy, and he goes, yeah, I just wrote this builder's risk policy for a company that's putting 2 towers in Dubai. And I said, how did you even come across that? And he goes, well, I have an agent in Seattle who just called me and said he knew somebody. He needed a quote for this. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the premium like on something like that? He's like, oh, it's in the millions.
Wow.
And I went, well, what's the commission on it? Like 2-3%? He's like, yeah, it's like 7 or 8%.
Wow.
And I'm going, okay, now I see where I want to go. That's how you take that next step. And you get on even a shorter list of professionals that do that kind of stuff.
Very cool. Excellent. Do you have room for other mentees in your life?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The more the merrier.
That's very cool. Do you have any other questions? I think you nailed it, man.
Yeah, we appreciate your time. We appreciate working with you over the last 10 years, and we are impressed with your growth over the growth and evolution over the past 10 years, from moving computers around to all of a sudden being the smartest guy in the room.
Man, I really appreciate it. I mean, one thing I always tell new producers that start here, and I'll just sort of get off my soapbox about it, is Ben & Rich will give you all the opportunities that you want. We have the technology, we have the carrier relationships, we have the beautiful office building that we put together as a home for us. If you have the desire to want to be your best self in a career that's going to challenge you and reward you with the highest highs you can imagine, this is the place to do it.
Well said. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. Well, cool, Eric. Thanks for spending some time with us today. We look forward to having you back in a future episode.
Anytime.
Talk about some other good, cool insurance stuff.
Yeah, man. Hopefully I'll be right in that Dubai building by then.
Right. Exactly. And buying that new Lamborghini with that commission. So thanks a lot, and we really appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this section of the Leader's Choice podcast. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubman of Painless Podcast, for helping us make the Leader's Choice podcast possible. For more information about us, check out our website at leaderschoiceinsurance.com.